Parashat Mishpatim. Would somebody like to read it?
Yeah. Parashat Mishpatim includes a list of interpersonal laws and cultic laws. It begins with the laws for the acquisition of a Hebrew slave and injunction to let him free on the seventh year and their treatment. It continues with the laws of treating the slave, maid servant differently and with honor. Then it discusses the capital crime of hitting one's parents, cursing one's parents, and kidnapping. Second earlier. Further, it informs about capital punishment for the murderer with intent, loss of inadvertent murderer, personal damages, injury to slaves, the killer ox, loss of damage by goring or injury, damage caused by inconsiderate action causing others to be in danger, penalties for stealing. It continues to discuss laws about damage by grazing, damage by fire, the restitution of an object stolen from a protector, returning the borrowed article, paying a bridal price, and marrying the woman tricked by seduction, capital punishment for occult practitioner, idolater, and one who lies with a beast. It continues to discuss moral laws with about the forbidden of oppression of stranger, widow or orphan. It instructs to lending money without interest.
Fourth Aliyah. It continues to instruct regarding accepting authority with respect and honoring justice. The law of firstborn as gifts for God, sacrifice of newborn animals after the 7th day, and forbidden nature of torn, injured animals for consumption to retain our holiness are discussed. Fifth Aliyah. We are forbidden to pervert justice. The law of the Shemitah, 7th year, Shabbat, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot are introduced. Prohibition against milk and meat. Sixth Aliyah. God instructed the nation to respect the authority of his messengers, the prophets, and teachers. He promised to chase out the 7 nations who inhabited Canaan and forewarned us against making a treaty of peace with them or being influenced by their practices and values. Seventh Aliyah. Hashem stated the means by which the 7 nations would be chased out of Israel and promised that if we do as instructed, no woman would miscarry. The borders of the land of Israel were defined. The conclusion of the parasha, Moshe built an altar, offered a sacrifice, and the nation proclaimed, "We will obey Hashem's commands and then hear." Moshe, Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, and the 70 elders have a shared vision, saw God, and that under his feet was a sapphire, like the purity of the sky, and then Moshe is told to ascend Sinai, where he would remain for 40 days and nights.
Thank you, Mr. So basically, we have a assorted nature of laws. I believe some 24 different categories of laws are discussed in our parasha today. So the main question that we need to ask really is what is happening in our parasha, Parashat Mishpatim. Last week we saw what happens is Moshe Rabbeinu is told that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to descend on the mountain. So there we get the 10 commandments. At the end of the 10 commandments, it says the people are so frightened that so we have Moshe Rabbeinu after the whole 10 commandments are mentioned. We have the people telling Moshe Rabbeinu, it is very difficult for us to bear the enormity of Hakadosh Baruch Hu's descent. We would like you to go and get the Torah for us, right? We studied this. So, and Moshe is called into the cloud. Moshe goes into the cloud. Over there, Moshe is instructed some basic laws about how to build the ramp instead of a ladder to an altar. That the altar itself has to not to be with any tools. It has to be just unhewn rocks, and so So it is sort of a question why, after the big 10 commandments, what are these laws doing over here, So the answer is found in our parasha today. Why are those laws important? Because if you remember, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's request to Pharaoh? Why was he supposed to come to the mountain of the Lord? It was because we want to sacrifice. We want to take our animals. We want to take everybody, and we have to sacrifice to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. What was this sacrifice about? What out of the blue? What is this sacrifice? What was the idea of this sacrifice? That they wanted to suddenly thank God, right? So this sacrifice that Moshe Rabbeinu mentions to Pharaoh is really the signing of the covenant between Am Israel and Hakadosh Baruch Hu. How does the signing of the covenant happen? It begins with Hakadosh Baruch Hu symbolically giving us his document, his contract. The 10 commandments are symbolic of that contract that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants us to understand, which is what we have to keep our part of the deal. And Hashem's part of the deal is also there, that he is going to keep us and he is going to make us a holy nation. The deal is then signed by making the sacrifices. That is how we sign the deal. How do we know that we have accepted it? We thank God for it, and so at the end of our parasha, we see a very unique happening. So I'm going to just move again from back to the front, so that we at least have the proper idea of what is happening, because the Torah is in bits and pieces, so we just fail to realize what is the enormity of this particular happening. Is that it was the signing of the contract. Chapter 24, I have not linked this, so you can't read this, but I'll just read it aloud. Then Hashem said to Moshe, "Come up to the mountain with Aharon, Nadav, and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel, and bow low from afar." So you come up to the mountain, but don't come near. You be little far and bow from there. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, nor shall the people come up with him. So no people, only 70 elders, Aharon, Nadav, and Abihu. They are the representatives of the people who will come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the mountain. Moses went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord. Now, what is this? When is this happening? This is when Moshe, after last week's parasha, Moshe went into the cloud. You remember we read that. He went into the cloud, where he was given a few mitzvot about how to build the altar, how to serve God, how not to sacrifice to idols. Why? Because it has an important consequence of what we will be discussing now. So those rules are given, and Moshe Rabbeinu is still in. And when he is in over there, he has not ascended the mountain, but he is in the cloud, whatever that means. So he is there halfway. In the cloud, he is getting the whole parasha that we are discussing today, Parashat Mishpatim. It seems to us, at least the Torah, the way it is written is, Parashat Mishpatim is given to Moshe Rabbeinu here. And then Moshe Rabbeinu comes out of the cloud, and that's why it says Moshe went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord. Vayavo Moshe, and Moshe comes out, has come from where? From the cloud. So Moshe immediately after the 10 commandments walks into the cloud alone. He gets a few set of rules which are there in the end of Parashat Yitro and Parashat Mishpatim, and now he is coming back to relate to the people what those rules are. So Moshe went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord, which is Parashat Mishpatim, and all the rules. And all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the things that the Lord has commanded, we will do. So over here it says, Kol hadevarim asher diber Adonai naaseh. When they hear the list of things, they say, we will do. We are ready. Vaiktov Moshe. Then Moshe wrote down all the commands of the Lord. Early in the morning, he set up an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He designated some young men among the Israelites, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as offerings of well-being to the Lord. Moses took one part of the blood and put it in his basins, and the other part of the blood he dashed against the altar. Then he took the record of the covenant and read it aloud to the people, which is Parashat Mishpatim. That is what he got over there. So that is the record that he had written, right? And they said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do. Moses took the blood and dashed it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant that the Lord now makes with you concerning all these commands. Then Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel ascended, as Moshe was instructed earlier. We read that in the beginning of this. And they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet there was the likeness of a pavement of sapphire, like the very sky for purity. So over here, we don't know what they saw, but it says that they saw under the feet HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something which was like sapphire, blue in color, like the very sky for purity, but very pure, very clean or transparent or whatever it may be. But they had a experience of looking at HaKadosh Baruch Hu and under his feet. All of them, all the 70 plus 70 elders, plus we have Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and Moshe Rabbeinu. And then it says, yet he did not raise his hand against the leaders of the Israelites. They beheld God and they ate and drank. So it is understood, the Torah understands that if somebody goes to such a level of nevuah, automatically they may die, which is the language that God raised his hand against them, right? The idea basically is that you are so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that your souls basically are attracted to him, that they just flow, defy all physical rules that he has created for the soul to exist in a body, and they head back. So he didn't allow that to happen. That is what it means. And they ate and they drank. So not only they saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then they had a meal over there in the honor of having this nevuah. So all the representatives of Israel got a nevuatic inspiration when they made the covenant. The Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the teaching and commandments which I have inscribed to instruct them. So Moshe and his attendant Joshua rose, and Moses ascended the mountain of God. To the elders he said, wait here for us until we return to you. You have Aaron and Hur with you. Let them who have a legal matter approach them. When Moses had ascended the mountain, the cloud covered the mountain. The presence of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud hid it for 6 days. On the 7th day, he called to Moses from amidst of the cloud. So they could see the Shekinah as if for 7 days the Shekinah had descended there. And on the 7th day, it called Moshe inside. From the presence of the Lord appeared in the sight of Israel as a consuming fire on the top of the mountain. Moses went inside the cloud and ascended the mountain, and Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So this is Parashat, end of Parashat Mishpatim. Now we have to get our understanding of the importance of Parashat Mishpatim. So Parashat Mishpatim is that base parasha on which the covenant was signed. You have the 10 commandments that were heard by everybody. Probably there were also the topics that were there in that document. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote everything down. Maybe he wrote 10 commandments as well as the the laws which are in the end of Ithro and the whole of Parashat Mishpatim. Now, the challenge is that Parashat Mishpatim is a assorted, if you can open your Torah, see, assortment of rules. If you, what do we try and understand? What if this is what we signed? This is the document we signed. What is the document about? That is the question we need to ask. What? Okay, you have to do this, you have to do that. As we read, we had to do Shemitah, we had to take care of the slaves, we have to not worship idols, we have to respect the king, respect the what? Can we really pinpoint what is this document wanting to say? Anybody has any ideas? What we will do is we will pick a few mitzvot, right? When you acquire a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years. In 6 years, in the 7th year, he shall go free without payment. If he came single, he shall leave single. If he had a wife, his wife shall leave him. If his master give him a wife, and she has borne him children, the wife and her children shall belong to the master, and he shall leave alone. But if the slave declares, I love my master and my wife and children, I do not wish to go free, his master shall take him before the Lord. He shall be brought to the door of the doorpost. His master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall then remain his slave for life. Okay, if one studies this mitzvah, what comes to your mind? Why Parashat Mishpatim, we may be able to certainly agree that why Parashat Mishpatim begins with this law. Any ideas? Why does Parashat Mishpatim begin with assortment of laws begins with this law about slavery? Why should it be the first one to begin the list?
Because it is applicable. We were slaves.
Correct. It is in our
In a,
conscious. We just have been redeemed as slaves. That is very relevant to us. And that is not only Hakadosh Baruch Hu once, because you all were slaves, that he went out of his way, because slavery is something abhorrent to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, not because everybody, including Jews, are equal to him. So slavery is something that he interfered with the laws of the natural world and made an exception for us. But the reason is because he abhors slavery. But if we answer that, then there is a contradiction. What is the contradiction? The contradiction is, why does he forbid slavery? Why didn't he forbid slavery? It continues to be there in some form or the other. Kadosh Baruch Hu should have forbidden slavery if he has his will doesn't agree with it. Why does he forbid slavery? What kind of rule is that? No, you can do it halfway through, right? Any answers? Yes.
no, I was saying maybe it was a cultural thing. It was so engraved in them that they couldn't sort of switch to no slavery at all. And he gave them that. I mean, today we talk about human rights and social activism and this and that after thousands and thousands of years. Only even few hundred years ago, it was still there in America and where else, and all these.
True.
Still, they are coming up with demonstrations like Black Lives Matter and whatnot. So maybe God
Right.
was practical about it, and He said, if it is an absolute must, do this, and after 6 years, he is no more a slave, or something like that.
Yeah. Even if after 6 years he's no more a slave, the institution of slavery remains, right? So that you have the bullseye, I think, Nissim. It is true. Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't, on one hand, this is a system, try and understand. It is economics. It is like how you depend on a bank today. However, uh, what is the word,
Capitalist and negativity.
yeah, how many ever demerits it may have, and whatever effects it may be having on, for example, our economy today. It is all ridden with debts. The way it goes, everybody has a credit card, everybody has some kind of a credit problem, student loans, this, that. People cannot get out of that uh, rut, right? We know the problems, but this is the system we have evolved. We have decided that we want to be capitalists. We want to, because on one hand, it gives us the opportunity to follow our dreams and opportunities to do whatever we want, right? So for that, we as human society has decided that this is what we will pursue. Similarly, in those times, this was something that human society have had come up with. They wanted, we have to understand, the industrial age today allowed slavery to go away. If there wasn't the industrial age, if we didn't figure out how machines will do human labor, we would have kept slavery, because now we talk about rights and we talk about everything. 2 minutes, there won't be any electricity in the world for another 6 months. We will go back to slavery. Why? Because that is the only fuel that will bring in economy, right? Labor was the only way that a person could become rich and richer and pursue his ambitions. In that setting, it was abused. To have a servant is okay, but to have a slave is a problem. What Judaism does, what the Torah does, basically brings the slave from that category of a slave to a category of a servant. First of all, he has rights. When you talk about, we'll see who can hit a slave, what rights you can hit a slave. Later on, you will see in our parasha, but you cannot kill a slave. He's not like he doesn't have any, he's just property that I belongs to. No, there is a difference. After 7 years, he has to go free. He has his own life, right? So those things bring him, and Hachamim later on, understanding the thrust of the Torah, made super difficult rules to own a slave. They said that if you have two pillows, if you have a single pillow, then you have to give it to your slave, then to use it yourself. And it's not only talking about pillows, it talks about everything. If you have two meals, or you have a single meal instead of a meal for a slave and yourself, you have to first give it to your slave. You cannot consume it, because you are responsible for your slave as a human being, right? That is how far the Hamim took this understanding. But let's not go into the understanding of the Hachamim. We are just saying, what did the Torah do with it, right? So first of all, the Torah said 6 years you will serve. Now this principle brings you, now you see, if we understand what the Torah is wanting to achieve by this, right? So there are a few levels the Torah works with. First is the level of nationhood. We are just about to create a nation. We are creating a society, right? So socially, what will work? So economy is important. Then you don't have any other way to produce, right? But to have slaves, to have servants. So Torah allows servants, they are allowed to be owned, but with limitations. The second important aspect is your spirituality. On one hand, you have your nation, your social life. On the other hand, you have your spiritual life. Spiritual life, it straight away comes in. Why is the seventh year? What is the point in make it every 10 years? What is there about the seventh year? No, there is an importance. What does 7 represent? 7 represents Shabbat. Shabbat is that day where we proclaim that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is the creator. That is the whole idea of Shabbat. By resting on Shabbat, by the mitzvah of resting on Shabbat, what we are saying is Hakadosh Baruch Hu is the creator. He created the world in a certain pattern. We follow the pattern because his creation is acceptable to us. We claim or we give edut. That is how the Hachamim put it. We give edut, we give witness to the fact that he is the creator and his the creation cycle has his stamp on it. So that's why a 7-day week, right? And we had spoken about this earlier also. There 7 is the imprint of creation. You have 7 in music, you have 7 notes, you have 7 colors. So that is in nature. Hakadosh Baruch Hu has that imprint of 7. So we respect that by saying that yes, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is the creator. The minute we understand that 7 represents this, and we say that every 7th year I take my slave and let him go free, what am I saying? I'm saying that I don't own him. He owns him. He is his real master. Everybody is free. I don't even own the property that I have. Every 7 multiplied by 7 years, 49 years, that is also going to go back to whoever owns it, right? So it is not there in this halakha, but I'm just bringing it in so that you would see the link. On one hand, it is the social link. On the other hand, it is the spiritual connection that you are aware that Hakadosh Baruch Hu owns the business, the creation, the fact that he has accepted you as covenantal partners and given you the land. Okay? That is 2 things we understand from what is coming out. Then we have our psychological baggage. Right? All with so there is the national aspect, then there is the spiritual aspect, and then there is the personal psychological aspect that I would like to underline. We ourselves were slaves. We ourselves have gone through the enormity or the pain and all the harshness of being a slave. We learn from that. If we don't learn from that, there cannot be any tikkun available, because life, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is basically informing us through these mitzvot that life is about growth by looking at ourselves and creating structures out of our experiences. And you will if we go down this mitzvah, maybe we will do this over Shabbat. If you will be able to go over all the mitzvot over here and put a finger as to where exactly in our history this has a consequence, this has some link, and you will be able to see so many mitzvot over there, like the mitzvah of the slave. You will see so many other mitzvot. Go over Shabbat, over the whole list, and you will see that there is a connection which is a personal connection with the history of our Mitzrayim. That these mitzvot will be able to make some personal psychological impact on us. Okay, that is your homework. Go over the mitzvot and see it, and come up with. We will talk about it next time. Now I would like to go into the second half of this mitzvah, which is a little challenging, in fact. The second half of this mitzvah talks about that slave who doesn't want to go free, right? That slave who says, I want to stay with the master. So why would somebody do that? I assume that he recognizes that there is no way. Only after 50 years, you see, his land is going to come back to him at Yovel. But he is going to be a free person now. Now he has been able to. He doesn't get a salary as a slave, but when the slave went free, there was a goodwill gesture on the part of the master that he gave him a bag of money, so he can start his life free. But how much will that, how how big is the money or whatever? How many days will it serve him? So out of his insecurity that his Yovel is still a little far, it could be that he may decide that he wants to stay with the master. Or over here, there is another option given that the master gives him a woman to be his bride, and he loves his woman. Now, because that woman is still a slave with the master, her time is not up, or she may have been a non-Jewish slave, so she doesn't go free. Whatever, because this is only for a Jewish slave that this law was. So if that woman was not supposed to go free, then he would have to divorce her. And he doesn't want to do that. He has started a family with her. So he, out of that interest, he wants to continue with the master. Okay. Whatever may be the case, he is then made, in his ear, they make a hole on the doorpost, and then he remains a slave forever. And the Torah and Hachamim say that that ear that heard heard the Torah and the fact that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants everybody to be free, but it did not penetrate in his ear. That's why the ear is basically the symbol which is used for him to. Okay, that is that aspect of somebody who wants to remain a slave all his life. So it is out of security, but again you will see Torah has already moved the bar from being a slave to being a servant. So he is not in a very bad place. He feels more secure with the master, in fact, and that's why he is willing to do that. Now, the third aspect over here, when a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not be freed as male slaves are, which means what? She shall not be freed on the 7th year? What could it be? When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not be freed as a male slave. So we will be confused if it says, so she will not be freed. So she will continue to be a slave? To begin with, if the man is poor, right? Why doesn't he sell himself? Why does he sell his daughter? That is a really, I mean, beyond our understanding. What kind of a man sells his daughter to be a slave? Wouldn't that be a little weird? That person, you sell yourself as a slave and provide for your family. Why would you want to sell your daughter as a slave? Correct? If she proves to be displeasing to her master who designated her for himself. So there are two things. First, the master now has designated her for himself, which means what? That he decided to when she grows up, get married to him. He must let her be redeemed. What is that? If she proves to be displeasing to her master, he must let her be redeemed. How is that? What does that mean? To allow her to be redeemed, he shall not have the right to sell her to outsiders. So how is she going to be redeemed? If he doesn't have any right to sell her to outsiders. Okay. Outsiders is non-Jews. So he cannot sell her out to non-Jews. Probably he can sell her to another Jew. Okay. Since he broke faith with her. So what is it that he broke faith with her? What did he do that he didn't bigdoba? What is it that he did with her that broke faith with her? And if he is allowed to sell her to other Jews, then what does he must let her be redeemed hold? Why would that hold? He must let her be redeemed. It is a little confusing, this mitzvah. And then it goes on, and if he designated her for his son, he shall deal with her as is the practice with free maidens. So if he designated her for his son, so not for himself, but for his son now, he shall deal with her as is the practice with free maidens. If he marries another, so what is it that he is practiced with free maidens? Which means what? Anybody can give me some clues? Let's look at the other one more part. If he marries another, he must not withhold from this one her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. And if he fails her in these ways, she shall go free without payment. What is this mitzvah talking about? First of all, it says if she is a slave woman, she has to be redeemed. She has the right to be redeemed. But then it says she can be sold to another Jew. But then it says she should not be sold. She has to be like a free maiden. And if she has to be like a free maiden, then last level goes, she shall go free without payment. So then what was the talk about earlier? That she has to be redeemed, or she has to be sold to other Jews. How does this mitzvah work? What is exactly the person who has bought this woman need to do? Bought this girl rather. Any ideas? Anybody wants to crack it?
Can she marry any other slave?
No, she is a free woman. She should not be marrying any other slave. She can either marry him or her owner's son, or for some family member, maybe his brother, or
Right.
if somebody cannot marry a slave. She has to be dealt with as a free woman. So this is how we have to crack it. Promiscuity, when they were slaves, promiscuity was very, very rampant. Slave women were used as concubines. They were all the master's property. Right? Torah comes and bans that. Torah says, no. This is something that cannot happen. You cannot use her because she is a Jewish woman. A Jewish woman cannot be used like a harlot, like a prostitute. So, out of that is another halacha. But over here, what happens exactly is Torah turns the whole idea of slavery topsy-turvy, turns it around. See, if I tell you that the reason the Torah has this mitzvah is because the Torah wants to see to it that society will change. Today, even today, years of getting this mitzvah, we know that those who are rich keep on becoming richer. Those who are poor keep on getting poorer. Right? Because the system is like that there is no way that, except somebody falls in love with a very rich man or woman, that there is this option that he can change his fortunes. Otherwise, you are in the same rut, you are in the same society. You have opportunities here and there that you can become an entrepreneur and be successful. Yes, no doubt. But otherwise, majoritarily, the society has no way of, balancing it out. It keeps on poor getting poorer and rich getting richer. This is a very good example of how the Torah changes that, because in every society, the first way the Torah did was after every 7 Yovel, the people will get their land. So everybody has the same starting point. They will have the basic land to start with. Then they are successful. They have more talents, and they will be able to grow their income. All is great. If they go down the drain and they don't have a way of, say they were a year and another year and another year, there was drought, they really didn't have some way of dealing with it, then the option was that they could sell themselves as Hebrew slaves, which means what? They will get the money for selling themselves or their family members, and that money went into whatever, taking care of the family or whatever, and that person for 7 years serves his master and comes back to his family after 7 years. If he has to sell his property, that is how the situation is, that he doesn't even own the property now. That is how bad his situation is. Even after 49 years, he is going to get his property back. So although there is slavery, there is a whole equation over here which will allow the slaves to come back to social standing. Okay. Over here, this is the opportunity for a father. He has a very beautiful daughter, and he is a very poor man, and he knows that he is very insecure, that there is no way that he will be able to. She will marry some another poor fellow from his strata, and she will spend a poor life. But he knows that his daughter, he has dreams, very high dreams for her. So he says, I have an option over here. Torah says, you know what? You can sell her as a slave. She will be sold to a rich guy who can own a slave. But because she is beautiful, because she is all that master has limitations. He cannot have her as a concubine. He cannot have her as a slave and have relations with her. He has to designate her, which means that he has to decide. She is probably underage for marriage. He has to decide, yes, when she grows up at 16, I'm going to marry her or whatever, right? So she is designated. So he tells her, this is a word that he gives her father. That's why the father is willing to sell her. That she will be coming into my house. She will, as she grows up, she will become my wife. But over the years, he sees that this girl is not to his liking. She doesn't listen to him. She's very, I don't know. They don't match. He doesn't want her to be his wife now. That is the situation that the mitzvah is talking about. When that happens, he cannot say, oh, I had purchased her for such a high price. Now I'm going to sell her off for a higher price. Let me make some profit on this deal. He can't do that. Why? Because he has broke faith with her. She was expecting to get married to him. Her father had sold because he will marry her, right? So in that case, what does he do? First of all, after every 7 years, the woman gets free. But in 3 years, she was 12 years old when he bought her. In 3 years' time, 15 years old. Now she is ready to get married, right? 15-year-old, but he doesn't want to marry her. Now what? She has to wait another 4 years. She is of a marriageable age now, right? She doesn't have to wait another 4 years till she gets her freedom and then she can do something with her life because he is not going to marry her, correct? So what does he do then? Then he goes back to her father and says, see, I purchased her. It was a bad deal. I can't marry her. She is not to my liking. She doesn't listen to me or whatever. She turned out to be not what I had expected. I want you to buy her back to redeem her. So they calculate the amount for 7 years' time. X amount was given to her. Then 3 years are remaining or 4 years are remaining. If you can raise the money for 4 years, you buy her back. So the father redeems her back, or her uncle redeems her back, or her brother redeems her back. Whoever is in the redeem that family has the right to redeem her back. Not only that, even if he, if he got married, then there's no redemption. If he got married, then what does it say for somebody who got married? And if he designated her for his son, he shall deal with her as is the practice with free maidens. The minute he gets married, or his son gets married, or anybody gets in his family gets married to this girl who was sold as a slave, she becomes a free woman. Now she is not only the slave girl that became a free woman, she is the slave girl who is the rich free woman of that rich husband, right? Why? Because you cannot have her, oh, I have married this slave woman. She is also my wife and also my slave. No way, no way. That doesn't happen. She is that one person's full-fledged wife, and she owns the property equally with him now, or whatever. Whatever the rules for property ownership in olden times were different, but she is a full-fledged wife of that rich person. He has to consider her as a free maiden, as if he married somebody from the community who was not poor. The minute from the uh, state of being a slave to being a married woman, she changes her status. She becomes a free woman. Then, if nobody is willing to marry her and her father doesn't have the money to buy her back, then what happens? He shall not have the right to sell her to outsiders. So he cannot make money on her. He cannot sell her out. That is forbidden. Since he broke faith with him. So what other options does he have? If he fails in 3 ways, she shall go free without payment. Okay. In all these options, I have not yet read the last option. If he is unable, he doesn't want her to, he has committed marrying her but doesn't want to marry her. Neither his son nor his family, anybody wants to take her as a wife. She doesn't continue to be a slave. She can be redeemed. She can be redeemed, or he has to otherwise sell her off. Not only that, halachically, when he decides to get married, also in the Gemara, it discusses this issue. So the Hachamim say, like, we when we get in marriage, we have to give a ring, right? Shave Puruta. There is something that you need to give to betroth a woman. In her case, the betrothal is done on the money that was paid to her father. Why? Because they have the same respect as if that it is of the same value. So she comes into the family as if they will marry her. One of the family members will marry her. And if that is not done, then you have the rules which are basically securing her interest, that she will not fall down as a slave and she will not be abused, right? So now that you have the background, let us look at the mitzvah and see how it makes sense. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not be freed as male slaves are. So the man is selling her as a slave so that she grows from the poor poverty status to a richer status. She will not be freed as a male slave because she will not be freed. Her way out is that she will get married. That's why she will not be freed on the 7th year. You don't wait for her for 7 years and let her go back. You have to get her married. If she proves to be displeasing to her master, who designated her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. Then he goes back to her father and says, whatever remaining money, you have to take her back. I don't want to keep her as a slave, and I cannot sell her also. He shall not have the right to sell her to outsiders since he broke faith with her. Okay? When he is designated, if he designated her for his son, he shall deal with her as is the practice with free maidens. So if she gets married, minute she gets married, she is no longer a slave. You cannot say she's my slave wife. There's no such thing. She becomes a free maiden, full-fledged wife. If he marries another, he must not withhold from this one her food, her clothes, or her conjugal rights. So if he says, okay, fine, I'll get married to her also, but this is my favorite wife. I'll marry the second wife, which will be my favorite wife. You can have 10 favorite wives, but you cannot say that because she's my favorite, now I don't consider the first marriage important. I will not give her conjugal rights. I will not give her clothing. I will not give her food. Can't do that. In fact, that Shera, Kesuta, Veonata, Lo Igra is from here. We may think that it is learned from somebody who is a slave, but it is not really a slave. This is the way that slavery was used so that a poor woman could get married into the elite. That is how Torah changes the face of slavery. It uses slavery so that the equation of poor and rich keep on mingling with each other. Okay? So, Shera, Kesuta, Veonata, if he fails in these three ways, she shall go free without payment. Now, he doesn't want to get her married. He doesn't want to do any of these above. And he decides to get married to somebody else. But he has not married her. So, what happens if he had married her and he gets a new wife and he doesn't respect the old one with Shera, Kesuta, Veonata? She goes free. There is no 7 years, no nothing. If he cannot respect her as a wife, she goes back as a divorced woman, free, not a slave. Okay? So we see how the Torah basically is using an existing problematic scenario, existing problematic institution of slavery and changing it to see that socially we will be able to build a society which has equal citizens in it. Oh, I would like to bring this section here also and read this. In this parasha, there is a mention over here. I am sending an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have made ready, which is Eretz Israel. Pay heed to him and obey him. Do not defy him, for he will not pardon your offenses, since my name is in him. But if you obey him and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes. When my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I annihilate them, you shall now not bow down to their gods in worship or follow their practices, but they shall tear them down and smash their pillars to bits. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless you, your bread and your water. And I will remove sickness from your midst. No woman in your land shall miscarry or be barren. I will let you enjoy the full count of your days. I will send forth my terror before you, and I will throw into panic all the people among you. And I will make your enemies turn tail before you. So this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's side of the covenant. So this is what Hashem is He's promising us. And the way it says that Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to send an angel on whom my name is there. So we have to understand this. What is this that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to send an angel? This is the Shekhinah. When we say the Shekhinah, that aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is going to be with Am Israel, this is the aspect. Because at this moment, when Moshe Rabbeinu had the Nevuah, the prophecy of the burning bush, right? He spoke with God, but there was an angel, right? That is exactly what it is. So with us, the pillar of fire was the angel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what it is talking about. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at this minute, when we are signing the contract, it is not with that aspect called the Shekhinah. It is with HaKadosh Baruch Hu completely. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has descended. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I can't be with you throughout, I am going to send my aspect, the angel. That is what we understand as the Shekhinah. The aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the Shachen, that stays with us, lives with us. Okay? And because of his presence, you have to act in a certain way. You have to act holy. You have to, from the land where that presence is present, there cannot be any idolatry over there. You have to, all the rules, which is not only not only how I deal with HaKadosh Baruch Hu or his presence, but how I deal with myself and my compatriots, with interpersonal relationship between others like me. All that creates an atmosphere where that Shekhinah can dwell. So that is very important for us to understand the steps how HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings the Shekhinah to the world. Anyway, I'll come back to that. We'll come to Uncle's question now. Uncle had asked a very, very important question. And the question was like this. When we make the baraha of the candles on Shabbat, we say, Asher Kiddeshanu, who has sanctified us with Sivanu and has given us the mitzvah to light the lamp of the Shabbat lights, Shabbat candles. Yeah. Now the question is, where in the Torah there is an Asher Kiddeshanu? There is no mitzvah which says that you light the lamps. If that is the question, if we are saying that Baruch Atah Hashem with his name, then Uncle is saying that isn't that taking God's name in vain? How come that is not taking God's name in vain? Right, Uncle? That is your question.
You're right. Because when you read the Torah, then when you don't say the Sivalano Likro Torah, not written.
Right.
That is the question.
Right. So the answer to the question is like this. I will take you back to another point you had made. And that point was in the parting of the Red Sea, right? Did Pharaoh die or did not die? So Uncle said, for sure, Pharaoh started off the journey, which says in the beginning, Pharaoh came with his military and pursued the Jews. 100%. Pharaoh needed to be punished because of what he had done. Pharaoh had died in the sea. But there are others who differ. They said, yes, it says over there that Pharaoh decides to go with his army. But later on, it always says that it is the Pharaoh's army and the Pharaoh's horses and Pharaoh's everything. But it never says the Pharaoh and his horses. It says Pharaoh's horses. So probably Pharaoh had not pursued them in the water and stayed back. And that's why he lost his army, which is much more painful. Once a person dies, what is there to feel pain and to knock sense in you? If he was alive, then all that destruction would make more impact on him. Now there are these two opinions, both of them Divrei Elohim Chaim. Why I am saying that both of them are Divrei Elohim Chaim is because the Torah purposefully is being what is the word? Ambivalent. Torah purposefully at one place says that Pharaoh was there, at the other place says he was not there, so that we will have both these opinions. Now, when we look at the Torah, according to me, if I study and I have a very strong intuition, I have a very strong inclination to claiming that yes, Pharaoh died, then it is an opening to look at myself. Why? Because when I understand the Torah in a certain way, right, and I think that this is what it has to be, and I turn it around as a mirror, then I can see that, oh, if Pharaoh died, then I am inclined to believe that Hakadosh Baruch Hu's justice is about punishing those who committed the act. Then I know myself better because I am inclined to think that this is how justice should be. I am on the side of Deen. My nature, my soul, sort of inclines on the side of Deen because that is how I interpret my Torah. What is the other opinion? The other opinion says, no, Pharaoh was not punished, but he got the message. His military was taken around and this and that, and then probably Pharaoh must have repented. So that opinion, whoever will feel that he is inclined towards that opinion, he can read it as a mirror that he has a soul which would like not the evil doer to be punished, but the evil in him to be uprooted. Now we have both things in us, but we are inclined in one way or the other, and there may be times in our life that we are one way and times in our life that we may be other, but that is the higher aspect of Limud Torah. If you remember last time I told you all, we were discussing how the psychology of mitzvah, how we have to enter into the mitzvah. The study of the mitzvah while doing the mitzvah is really to get into our deep selves. One of the reasons I said that the psychology, the psyche, if you make a study, all that was in our history has been converted to mitzvot. The fact that we were slaves, the fact that Abraham, Isaacs wives were, taken. So there are mitzvot forbidden to do that. So you will see. I have given you that as an homework. So you all will see there will be hints, right? How and why our history is converted into halakha. Why is that? Because I can use that halakha to enter my own psyche, my own self. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on one hand, wants a very, very cultured people, sophisticated people, people who has a deep understanding of morality. All that is true. But if it is from the outside, if it is from the superficial that we head into it, it won't change the world. And what is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wants to do is that he wants to bring that angel that is not available to other communities to be present with Am Israel, because really that angel is supposed to be the solution for the world's problems. We What is the fact that the angel was there? The fact that the angel is there is that it is a conduit for Am Israel, or at least the representatives of Am Israel, 70 elders, to experience God. That is what it means later on when it says that the 70 elders did not die, although they were able to experience the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah itself is the ability, or the angel opens that ability for humanity to come in touch with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The way it has to happen is that we have to create an atmosphere for that channel to be present. That channel, that is the doorway towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what was lost by Adam. The doorway was lost by Adam. That is what it says when it says that there were two cherubim set up to the tree of life. What it means is that channel was lost. There was some block in that channel. How was that channel really created? It was created by this angel that came with the covenant. That angel is our entry into looking at God without dying. Otherwise, without that channel, if anybody goes directly, he is going to be hid by the cherubim. This angel to exist, this doorway to be around, we need to have a space that is called holiness. How is it brought into the world, this atmosphere of holiness which will be able to bring the angel down? How is it? It is not by understanding or not keeping do not murder. Yes, it is. On one hand, if a person is totally inflamed because he wants revenge and he wants to murder somebody and he stops himself, so at that minute, it is going to probably help us keep the angel around. But that is not how it works. How it will work is when that person was studying Torah, when that person was not involved in his passions, and that's when he took a look at himself and he recognized what his energies were, and he recognized what his higher callings were. And then when the situation led him into that bad state, he is then very, very easily able to deal with it. Correct? That is the whole aspect of the Torah, that it gives you life. And that is why it is Parashat Mishpatim talks about assortment of halachot. It is not that only in the cultic area that when you make sacrifices, that you can access that conduit, that channel. It is not only in interpersonal area that you can access it. It is in every area. How you treat your parents, that is an opportunity. How you treat your neighbor is an opportunity. How you treat the poor is an opportunity. How you treat your wife is an opportunity. Everything. How you breathe is also an opportunity. Why you breathe is also an opportunity. How you eat is also an opportunity. But that I'm now making an extension from Parashat Mishpatim. Parashat Mishpatim is giving me an ability to understand that not only in this area, we cannot make such areas. Life is itself the opportunity, wherever it will take you. How is it that you are going to see that this is a mitzvah? Even if it is not there in 613, one of the principle is there in the 613. Whatever is that aspect that I would like to learn more about myself is there in 613. It could be Shabbat, that is going to tell me who the creator is. It is going to be how to interact with my neighbor or the person who is a stranger, because I was a stranger, right? I was a stranger in Egypt. Now I have to remember that, to bring it into my consciousness that this aspect of life is not foreign to me, that it is me. Okay. I wanted to really bring I just lost that train of thought. One more idea. If it comes to me, we'll ask questions. If it comes to me again, I will also include that idea. But I think we are already uh, yeah, we are 1.5 hours plus. Okay. So any questions till now? And if I remember, I will also add that.
Friends, you can unmute yourselves. Uncle का questions are still, please विचारा. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to first answer uncle's question. I didn't. Now I realize. So what I wanted to bring from here, like we have these two ways of understanding Pharaoh, right? Similarly, the Hamim, they saw into the Torah. And for example, think about it. There was a time when there was no lights. I am sure uncle, when he was in India, there was no electricity. Probably some houses had, very rich houses had electricity, right? So when there was this light, correct? It was seriously a symbol of illumination. It was seriously a symbol of something divine. When there was no electricity in the world, it had a very high value, right? Now, when Hachamim recognized that this is an important aspect of Shabbat to have light, because light represents spirituality, right? So, whoever was the Hacham, however years old, right, when he realized that if, I'll tell you when it was realized, there was a group of Jews who now are followed by the group that is Samaritans, and there is another group, I forget. It is a cutaway group who only follow the written Torah. They don't follow the oral Torah. So that group said, we will observe the Shabbat, but we will not light lamps. It is forbidden to light lamps even before, because it says don't light fire. And they, even today, the way they observe Shabbat is by sitting in darkness. So when Pharisees, the Hamim that we have our tradition from, understood that this is what they are doing, right? They said, hold on. Not only it is important to light a lamp and have candle lights when you observe the Shabbat meal, but it is because we are saying so, and because it is our understanding that this is linked with the idea of Shabbat, because idea of Shabbat is it's delight. Shabbat should be a delight. That is a concept in Shabbat. And now I understood the concept and I understood how it is to be observed by lighting lamps. Now, if I relate the two, then who has told me that you should take delight in Shabbat? It is Hakadosh Baruch Hu. In the morning of Shabbat, Veshamru bene Israel et Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לקדשו ביני ובין בני ישראל אות היא לעולם. No, not that. On Shabbat morning, when we make the Kiddush Harabah, we say that line, that it is a delight, it is not coming to me. That is from a Navi. Now, when the Navi has taught us that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants you to delight in Shabbat, and I, as the Chacham, whoever was there on the Sanhedrin there, saw that this is linked, that the delight is linked with candle lights. If you don't have light, how can you look at your wife? How can you look at your children? How can you interact with them? How can you sit on a table and enjoy a meal? How can there won't be delight? And delight is Shabbat, and I understand that delight is Shabbat. It is his interpretation, but it is so much important for him to teach it to those Jews who had missed the mark, that he made a beracha saying Asher Kiddeshanu be Mitzvotav, because delight is Asher Kiddeshanu. It comes from the Navi himself, right? And that's why he linked it so that you will get the point so important that it is really there, but I can't see it. He could see it. And that is the whole of Torah. My class last time I said that this whole idea that there is one Torah which is the given Torah, but it cannot be, because Torah has to be dynamic. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is dynamic. The biggest dynamic thing in the world is Hakadosh Baruch Hu. If that is the case, then how can I set the Torah in stone? It cannot be set. That's why it has to be your Torah. It has to come through you. Like the Pharaoh, like your interpretation that the Pharaoh died, it is your, because you look at the Torah from your experiences, from your understanding, from your wisdom, then you will come to that goal. And that is why it is important. Similarly, once we understand that Torah is always fluid, then we will be able to, then we will be really able to say Asher Kiddeshanu Mitzvotav, because all that is really coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I will really end with the mitzvah of the prosbol. We know everybody today in Israel are Jews. So we are forbidden to go to a bank and get a loan, because in today's mitzvot, in Parashat Mishpatim, one of the mitzvah is not to give a loan on interest. How do we take it on interest? What is that aspect? Then we are forbidding. I mean, especially all those people who are observant, like you and me, would not be able to take a loan from a bank, right? How can, I mean, the person who is taking the loan is also forbidden to take a loan on interest, because interest is forbidden, correct? The word interest comes nashah. I think that is the word, again, a link with Neshicha of the serpent. It is like the serpent in Gan Eden, that his venom could cause whatever it caused, although it didn't bite anybody then, but it's the symbolism of the serpent. Neshech is interest, because it causes everything to go very poisonous. So how is it that we are taking interest? You know, in history, what happened? During the time of Yohanan ben Zakkai, people were not willingly giving their brethren, the poor people who were asking for loans before the sabbatical year. Because, you know, after every 7th year, the loans maaf ho jata. You cannot, if the person could not pay you the loan, it is cancelled, right? So every 7th year, people who are like on the 6th year in a dire state went for loan. People closed their hearts. No, you don't have time to pay it back. I won't get my money back. So that was a problem. So Yohanan ben Zakkai, like we said, he understood the halacha, and he said, okay, what we will do is we will have to find a system around it. And he said, it's the biggest mitzvah to give a loan without interest. And the mitzvah applies to human beings. But if it is a company, like today's idea of a company, but that is Yohanan ben Zakkai. He said, if you go to a Beddin, if you go to a entity which is not human beings, but 3 people are sitting on a charitable trust, right? If you make that a trust, if you go to a Beddin, you make a trust, and from there the money is going, then that entity, because it is not flesh and blood, it doesn't have a soul, doesn't have the mitzvah of letting go of the loan on the 7th year. What did he do? He reinterpreted, found a loophole in a way how people will be able to be helped, because otherwise they were not getting help. So because of such a beautiful rule, people were being harmed. If they didn't have the rule, people would have lended them the money. But now they need the money, but because of this aspect of interest, even the main amount was not coming to them when they would be able to save themselves. So he changed that. How do we say that this is from Torah? This is against the Torah, adding to the Torah, subtracting from the Torah. Yes, it is, but no, it is not. Because the Torah is fluid, according to the circumstances, according to our understanding. Now, if some Tom, Dick and Harry would have done it, it is not. It has to come through a Sanhedrin. It has to go over. And I was looking for those rules in our parasha. There are something, but I think I am missing some papers. But in our parasha, you have to follow the majority. You have to follow the 70 elders. You have to follow the people who are sitting with Moshe Rabbeinu. The Navi you have to follow. You have to follow the king. You have to follow the teachers of that age. If we don't have that system, then what was Yitro talking about to Moshe? We have a system in place which will be able to help us sort of reform the Torah, but not in a bad sense, in a positive sense, to understand. If the Hacham understands the spirit of the Torah, that is what is the most important. Yes, Torah is in physicality, it is set and it is very stringent, but still we cannot only talk about the stringencies and only talk about the framework without the spirit. If the spirit goes against the law, then we have the ability to bring in the spirit, like bringing the candlelight to Shabbat, because that is delight. That is the original aspect of Shabbat. Okay.